there were people there from Spain, there were people there from Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, Holland, Belgium, and a couple of other countries that are France, that I will forget. I don't want to forget, but the thing about the meeting was that it showed me that there can be such a thing as European unity, that people in Europe can unite around issues that really matter to them, people that, in a sense, they feel in their heart. But this kind of unity that people have from different countries, an organic unity which links them to their rooted concerns about the future of society, is very, very different than the project which they're trying to impose upon us, which is that of the United States of Europe, or the way they put it, more Europe. Because whenever they talk about the United States of Europe, and whenever they talk about more Europe, what they're really trying to do is to precisely to undermine and in the end destroy the cultural roots that can, in a sense, flourish and nurture the kind of national cultures that have really made Europe what it is. You know, when you look back at human history over the last 1,000 years, you will find that one of the distinct contributions of European culture has been the diversity of its national cultures. When you look back all the way to from the Roman era onwards, you'll find that in Europe, like anywhere else, you don't have to go very far, 100, 200 kilometers, and you're in a different country. You don't have to go very far before you come across a different language than your own. And this heterogeneity of sovereign states within the European context, this heterogeneity of cultural aspirations, is what made European civilization so exciting and so important. And it seems to me that unless we understand that Europe, the survival of Europe, ultimately depends upon the nurturing of this sovereign aspiration and giving it real meaning, unless we really take that a little bit more seriously, we're going to find that Europe will become, in a sense, a cultural and political desert that will really be a second-rate imitation of California and its values. And that's really what the United States of Europe project is really all about. And I hope that the speakers will clarify this very important issue that, you know, when they talk about the United States of Europe, or more Europe as they put it, they really do mean business. And the business that they want to really put forward is the corrosion and the undermining of the national aspiration, the patriotism, that patriotic feeling that young people have as they're growing up, which makes them who they are and gives them identity. That is really what is at stake in this discussion. So please pay attention, please think about the issues at stake, because it's going to have a very important long-term consequence. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, sorry, forgot the microphone. I was sitting on it. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Okay, so look, thanks to Frank for putting this evening in such an important and clear context. My name's Tony Gilliland. I am the... what am I now? I've forgotten. There's been a lot going on today. We've had a very busy day today. I am the Chief of Staff at MCC Brussels, and I'm delighted to welcome you for the event. Just to say a couple of brief words specifically, that this evening what we're doing is launching Akos Spencer-Gatt's report, which is called The United States of Europe, the Reality Behind the Narratives, and that's been published today. And really pleased to have Spencer with us to talk us through some of the key points. But it explains in really great detail, in fact painful detail for those on the receiving end, the euphemisms that have been used by the EU elite to avoid talking about what Frank's just spoken about, to avoid talking about what their actual project is, to avoid talking about federalism and the United States of Europe. It also gives an incredibly clear account of how there's been a massive push by stealth to try and move everything, or in fact successfully in many ways, to move things in the direction of the United States of Europe, all without a mandate. So, Benson, we're really looking forward to hearing more from you. And once you've heard what's been said tonight, I really hope that you will go to our publication section of our website, it's the top report on there, download it and read it in full. Because the reality is, it's for all of us who care about national sovereignty, who care about democracy. You can't have democracy without national sovereignty. If we care about it, we need to kick up a fuss. And the ammunition and the intellectual arguments to help you explain to others, to put across the importance and significance of what's gone on, are in that report. So I really do encourage you to read it and share it and encourage other people to take it seriously. Okay, so Benza will be first to speak. Just to tell you a few little things about Benza. Apart from being my colleague, he's head of EU affairs at MCC Brussels. He's a lawyer, and he's previously worked at the Ministry of Justice for Hungary, advising the minister. He's also been a cabinet member of the team for the president of the European Parliament, and most recently, up until now, head of communications at the Danube Institute. He's the author of a book called European Policy on the Rule of Law, a glimpse behind the scenes, and that's also an excellent read. Okay, so Benza, thank you for all the work that you do. Then, very, very pleased to have responding. First to respond to Benza is Jorge Buxadei-Villalba, who is an MEP with Vox and head of the Spanish delegation of the European Conservatives and Reformists Group. So welcome to Jorge, and apologies for any damage I did to your name there with my terrible British pronunciation, but you get used to it. Sorry, that's not quite what I meant, but I'm doing my best here. So Jorge, thank you very much for being with us. Jorge is also a member of the Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs Committee, amongst others at the European Parliament. He is also a lawyer and a member of the Barcelona Bar Association and a former state attorney and university lecturer. So thank you very much for taking the time for being with us. And now to my biggest challenge of the evening, I'd like to welcome our second respondent, which I was doing so well earlier, but now I'm on a roll. So Jirja,
Yes.
is it okay? Jirja, Thank you. He's the president of the board of Ordo Juris, the Institute for Legal Culture. He's an attorney and managing partner of a law firm. I'm not going to do it. And he's got a long-term experience in civil litigation and proceedings focused on civil rights, freedoms, rights of the family, and children's rights. And many apologies for that, Jirja. But we go on now on a better footing. Okay, so without further ado, Benza, the main act. Please, round of applause.
So thank you very much, and thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Tony, for the introduction, and it saves me to tell my title, because if I make a mistake, it can be a problem as well. I remember when I was at the Danube Institute, at once I thought I was research director, and the research director was in front of me. So I know this feeling, and it wasn't a purpose, and it wasn't an ambition from my side, but a long day. So thank you very much, and thank you for the distinguished guests to be with us today. Now, let's go for a less funny topic, which is the United States of Europe, and I really take it seriously, because what I think and what I try to prove in my report is that the EU elite is building a European superstate, a kind of European empire, or a United States of Europe. The goal is to take power away from the European countries and centralize this power in Brussels. If this process goes through without any difficulties, any objections from our side, we can arrive at the point
that the most crucial questions are not decided by us at the national level through democratic processes, but will be decided far from people in Brussels, in the Brussels bubble. And what are these crucial issues? Of course, we could here make a list of all important issues for citizens. But let's take a look at the agenda of the European Parliament currently. They are talking about migration, the Migration Pact. It means that they want to decide with whom we are supposed to live with and how we are supposed to organize our societies. They want to decide also on the question of how to educate our children, what do they have to learn at school, and what are the values they have to be brought up with. They also want to decide about peace and war, and now there is this tragic war in Ukraine going on, and what we see is that in the European Union they want to end the unanimity vote in the Council for foreign and security and defense policy. They also want to decide about taxes, how much taxpayers should pay, and how these taxes should be spent. So these are very crucial elements which are very close to our daily lives. And now that we saw that the stakes are high, we have to say also that the tragic problem in this whole question and in this whole picture is that people are not aware of what is happening really in Europe. So peoples of Europe are just not aware because they don't know that much the European Union. It seems to be very complicated. It is. But also the reason for this unawareness is the fact that the EU elite, which is constructing the United States of Europe, does not speak out this goal openly, but they are using an evasive policy making. This is a tactic of not speaking out the main ultimate goal, but to speak about more Europe without explaining that actually more Europe means less nations, or even the end of European nations and European countries. And this is a democratic problem. And in my report, what I try to do is to highlight this phenomenon, bring to the surface what is going on in the European Union, and explain it in a plain language, but supported with data and analysis what is really happening. And in my report, what I did in the first chapter, I don't want to detail each page, but maybe giving an outlet can be interesting. So in the first chapter, I collected a lot of quotes from the EU elite because I wanted to make them speak with their own words. And I say that they don't really speak out their goal of United States of Europe, but sometimes it happens, because sometimes they feel comfortable because of the political context or because of the fact that they are talking to an audience which is friendly towards them. Maybe this is our case as well. But we can find quotes from the top EU officials and politicians who say that we really have to create a federal Europe, a United States of Europe. Let's go for it. Let's create it. Sometimes they also admit that, yeah, we know that people won't be in favor of. So that's why we don't speak out this goal. We remain evasive. I have quotes in the report on this, so it's really worth reading it, I think so. Then we have a lot of quotes on how they try to avoid mentioning the United States of Europe, and they say more Europe without explaining what it is. So there is already this research done in this paper. And what I noticed is that during the different periods, the narrative changes. Sometimes they are more open on this goal, sometimes they hide it. And what is alarming is that during the last years, they are putting more and more openly claims on the table to claim for more supranational power, for supranational institutions, and they want to translate their idea into effective treaty changes as well. So it means that something happened. And I would like to mention some contextual elements, some factors which might influence their confidence, why they are that much self-confident. For example, the UK left the European Union which is a tragedy for those ones who believed in state sovereignty, because they were the main opponents, you worked on it, with the Brits, the main opponents of the idea of centralization in the European Union. But there is also, for example, the COVID crisis, where for the first time in history, the European Union issued joint debt, joint borrowing for European member states, which is also a step closer towards the United States of Europe, and I explain in the report why it is the case. There is also this tragic war in Ukraine going on, and as I mentioned, the EU elite uses this in order to motivate motivate their claims for ending up unanimity votes in the Council and the foreign security questions. There is also, and we have to say it before the European elections, during the last 5 years there was a favorable context for more Europe, let's say it like this, in the European Parliament, but also in the Council, where we have the governments of Germany putting in the government manifesto the aim of a federal Europe, and we have also French President Emmanuel Macron, who is of course openly in favor of more supranational power for the EU. And also, de facto treaty, without treaty changes, de facto institutional changes happened in the European Union during the last 5 years as well, but also more broadly during the last decade and a half. What does this mean? This is the so-called transformation of the EU by stealth. Is that the last treaty amendment, the last treaty change, entered into force in December 2009 with the Lisbon Treaty, and the EU elite should have applied this treaty like, okay, we have the same situation in 2009 and in 2024. But if we look at the institutions and the power structure of the European Union and the power relations between institutions, member states, and so on, you will see that the European Union changed a lot towards the European superstate. That is because the institutions became much more political. For example, the European Commission declared itself to be a political commission instead of being a technical body. The European Parliament ended up with a diplomatic component. They became a kind of main political enemy of the national idea. And also, there is the factor of the ECJ, so the European ECJ, the European Court of Justice, who started at the end of the 2010s playing a role in this political debate, and I am looking at Jerzy because the Polish case, the Polish judiciary system case, was one where the European Court of Justice established a case law where they really jumped into the internal matters of the member states. And in general, if you look at these three institutions, just for example, we will see that these three institutions started to deal with internal matters of the member states without having competencies to doing so. And I'm coming to the end of my presentation, but what I want to say is that in the report I am talking also about these reform proposals. That means that during the last period, last couple of months, we had several reform proposals by which the EU elite tries to transform this ongoing transformation of the European Union into the United States of Europe. They try to translate it into a treaty change as well. So you have now on the table proposals which would create, for example, the institution of the President of the European Union instead of the President of the European Commission, and much more. And for me, that shows that for the European elite, a momentum has arrived to enact their ideology and their utopia into facts. And that is why I think that we have to take care and we have to analyze these proposals, like several analyses were already published also in Poland. I think Ordo Iuris also published one good analysis. And we have to go forward because the European elite tries to convince us, and this will be the tactic for the future, that this is the only way for progress. And this is undebatable. And if someone is against the treaty changes that they want, it will be labeled Eurosceptic. So keep this in mind. If you want to keep the European Union of today, you will be Eurosceptical. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Bence. Thanks ever so much. So before I come to Jorge, I just want to give those people who are standing up the opportunity, then you won't disturb anyone. If you like, all our special guests have arrived. They're up here. There are some seats at the front, so if you'd like, come and sit at the front. There are also some seats there just in the middle, so if you would like to come and sit down, you are very, very welcome. Please, thank you. Thank you very much. Right, okay. Jorge, your thoughts, please.
Very much. Many thanks to the Coordination Collegium for the invitation to participate in this event on the United States of Europe. And many thanks to the rest of the participants. The first thing I would like to say is that you have to forgive my bad English. Actually, this is the first event where I publicly speak English. And I do it only out for my respect and my love for the Hungarian nation and for Fidesz. When I arrived 5 years ago, my knowledge was quite zero. I was a lawyer, I was studying for being a state lawyer, attorney, and English is not necessary for my job. And now I am studying and improving. If I might say so, this single language-related circumstance is the most obvious demonstration that the goal of creating a United States of Europe is an insane project. The advocates of a United States of Europe seek to create a power structure centralized in Brussels, where everyone speaks English, think globally, and act according to rules imposed by bureaucrats who never have been in anywhere where their decisions are to have an effect. Because real citizens, those who go every day to work for sometimes miserable salaries, want to continue speaking in Spanish, Hungarian, Polish. They want to continue celebrating their traditions, their holidays, singing their songs, and dancing their traditional dances. The European Union and Europe are two different things. Europe has 3,000 years of history. The EU has 30 or 60 years. It since Maastricht or the European Economic Community. But what is certain is that the founders intended to identify their project of a community of free states with Christian Europe. We know two things that the federalists don't know. First, how our compatriots live and what they really want. The federalists, the bureaucrats, no longer know it. They have lost their sense of reality. Second, how our parents or grandparents lived. The federalists no longer know this because they have forgotten it on purpose. And it is our strength. I want to start with a message of optimism that we are facing a new Europe, which is certainly going to emerge on June the 10th, the day after the coming European elections, which will be on June 9. Without doubt, the most important elections since the Treaty of Maastricht. It is a pivotal moment in the history of Europe, in which patriots, conservatives, reformists, identitarians, sovereignists are facing the very real possibility of returning to common sense and returning to the true Europe. Our motto in the upcoming regional Basque elections in Spain is, you know it's true. Because beyond labels and ideologies, what we defend is common sense, what millions of citizens think and defend in private, and to whom we must aspire to represent. Do you know any defender of European federalism who firmly believes in the dignity of the human being, in the sanctity of human life? Do you know any defender of centralized power in Brussels, who truly believes in the market economy, fair competition, or the competitiveness of the European companies? Do you know any defender of European federalism who prefers their nation to any United Nations agencies? Do you know any defenders of Brussels power who are not fans of gender theory, climate fanaticism, or open borders? All those federalists are the false elites who do not sacrifice themselves for anyone, but ask everyone to sacrifice themselves for them. The false elites who have no love for anything or anyone, but only for their privileges. These false elites who have been sacrificing Europe for decades on the altar of the most destructive ideologies. We already know what decentralized Europe means. Decentralized Europe doesn't mean more freedom, more prosperity, more culture, more health, more equality, more social and regional inclusion. It means expropriation of the sovereignty of nations, loss of the national identity, inequality between nations or regions, and less social justice. We already know what decentralized Europe means because we have lived it. It means cultural cancellation, anti-life and anti-birth policies, open borders for illegal migrants, and growing insecurity on the streets of Europe, maybe except Hungary. Murders, gun rapes, robberies, crimes that we haven't known in Europe until now. We already know what decentralized Europe means because we have experienced it during this term, during the von der Leyen Commission. In Poland, Brussels has denied European funds until the conservative government of law and justice has lost the power. In Hungary, they have tried it, but only the strength of Viktor Orban and Fidesz have prevented it. In Spain, this centralized power of Brussels means that our farmers suffer unfair competition from Moroccan farmers, while Brussels sends hundreds of millions of euros to Morocco, and Morocco push the migrants against the borders of Spain. The United States of Europe is the fastest and most effective way to destroy Europe. Europe is its nations. Spain is a nation, Poland is a nation, Hungary is a nation. All three are nations with more than 1,000 years of history. Spain, Poland, and Hungary united their birth in the roots of the conversion of their peoples to Christianity and have been great and strong when their political unity has gone hand by hand, hand with hand, with religious and spiritual unity. We know that decentralized power doesn't mean secure borders and strong families. They have been weakening our borders for decades with the false humanitarian speeches from the universities and media. They have been dissolving our families for decades, creating confusion in our children and our youth. We don't need to know more about them. We know everything about them. What we have to do is report them, point out that they are responsible for Europe's weakness, point them out as responsible for the insecurity, violence, unemployment, and devastation of our societies. And together, build an alternative. and I think we are doing it. It is true that we have less money, less means, less power, less media, but we have one thing they don't have. We have love for our homelands, and we know how to unite. And if we know how to unite this patriotism in a common project, which is to rescue Europe from the elites, I am convinced that in the next term, the next legislature, we will be able to begin to return to Europe, to security, freedom, and prosperity that it should never have lost. I finish now. It's one paragraph. That is why we oppose the United States of Europe, because we already know what they mean, and because we do love Europe. And we know that the United States of Europe are not Europe. We are the true Europeans, because we are the true patriots. Thank you very much. UMCC. I'm sorry for my English.
Okay, well, for your first public experience in English, that was fantastic and bang on time as well. So you must have been practicing. Thank you for taking it so seriously. Joja.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Vince, for this report, and thank you very much for raising this issue of United States of Europe. The issue that probably is the most important one for all our nations. And Jorge just mentioned that we already know the United Europe. We already know the flavor of Europe uniting, but our nations of Central European region know very much what does it mean that united Europe is being implemented, and it was implemented for many decades with the capital not in Brussels but in Moscow. And we already know what does it mean that there is a single state, centralized bureaucracy, taking over control over nations, eliminating borders, eliminating differences, and imposing single ideology that wants to provide the new identity for a new man, for a new reality. And that was the communism, that was the United Socialist Republics with capital in Moscow. And thank you very much for this great report that summarizes all the arguments that are so much needed just now to discuss the growing threat of centralized European superstate, or rather European empire, that is trying to be imposed over our nations. And I may say that the report is somehow a book of grudges to be invoked against this rising power. And indeed, it is a less funny issue, as you started with. So many issues are mentioned in the report, and so often we tend to focus on just a single violation by European Union. We so often tend to focus on just a single violation of a treaty, just a single transgression of EU bodies, just a single decision of the Court of Justice issued ultra vires. And then a new violation comes, and previous breaches are so easily forgotten. And with time passing, a stable practice of recurring non-observance of the rule of law, the treaty obligations, becomes in fact acquis communautaire. And the body of those created acquis communautaire becomes, with time, a foundation for new treaty amendments. And that is what we see now with those 267 amendments that were accepted by the European Parliament, created by the Constitutional Commission of the European Parliament, but in fact written by radicals under the umbrella of the Conference on the Future of Europe for 2 years, paid by EU taxes.
And your report lets us to re-examine and remind this long history of rogue development of EU law. And if we speak of United States of Europe, European superstate, European empire, centralized, single state, in fact, we need to understand that it is already happening. It is not a threat that is coming. We are already today, April 2024, in the middle of the formal process implemented under the provisions of the Lisbon Treaty to amend EU treaties with 267 amendments. This is formal process already accepted by European Parliament. We are waiting for the convent. We are waiting for the 267 amendments to be put for voting in each and every member state. In some of them, those more democratic, maybe for referendums. In others, without awareness and without single debate, public debate, put in public TV or on the streets of those countries. What emerges from the analysis of those 267 amendments already in November accepted by the European Parliament is this whole package of changes leading to a concrete vision of the European superstate. And all of those amendments are in fact realization of a long-known founding myth of a European superstate. And in the preamble to those amendments, it is openly declared. It is not Altiero Spinelli who is invoked. It is a single book by him, Manifesto Ventotene. What does it mean? Abolition of borders, destruction of nations, elimination of private property, replacing democracy with dictatorship. It is what can be found in Manifesto Ventotene, openly invoked in the second point of preamble to the resolution of the European Parliament. Because what Spinelli wrote in the 40s is that we do need a single European state, and it may not be brought about by democratic procedures. He despises democracy. He openly says we need the dictatorship of a European party that will provide for a new education, a new man, and a new state without nations, without borders, and without previous identities. Only with a single European identity, maybe some regional identities only. And what can be found among those 267 amendments? In our report, Why Do We Need Sovereignty?, we try to classify all the amendments into 10 fields of sovereignty being taken over by European Union. And the question is, whose needs are addressed by those amendments? Bureaucrats in Brussels or the nations, the member states? Who needs taking over climate policy by European Union only? Who needs the Brussels to take over all foreign policy issues from the member state without the veto power of our countries? Who needs the Brussels to take over national borders and border security from the hands of Polish people, from the hands of Hungarian people, from the hands of our sovereign member state of the European Union? Who needs a defense union that will take over governing our military, that will take over our external security and our military spending? Is it Poland spending 5% of GDP for military? Or is it Brussels that wants our money to be spent on their, by their decisions? Who needs Brussels to take over control over cross-border infrastructure, airports, highways in all over Europe? And who needs Brussels to take over control over all industry? It is a new shared competence, industry. Single currency, education. It is Spinelli. We need a new education of a new man, for instance, in order to provide for a new nation, new European nation. So they need to take over control over the education. And it is among 267 amendments. Then health issues. And 3 times it is underlined in the provisions, in the amendments, that health issues means also abortion, surrogacy, and all other sexual and health and reproductive rights. For Poland, unacceptable. We have our own constitutional identity for 20 years of full protection of human life. And finally, family issues. All family law and family issues to become a shared competence under the European law. Last remark. It is extremely concerning that the cutting edge of the reform already put in process is directed against both transatlantic cooperation and the ambitions of our Central European countries to build strong and effective national armed forces in face of international threats. And again, this superstate idea proves not to be an answer for the needs of the nations. It addresses only the needs of the bureaucracy, and we already know this kind of a superstate addressing the needs of the Moscow bureaucracy, of the party bureaucracy, of the Communist Party bureaucracy, and we already and we are to some extent immunized, vaccinated against it in Hungary or Poland. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Jerzy. Okay, so we're really keen to get your thoughts. I just want to put a question to all 3 of you whilst the audience gather their points and their thoughts to put to you, okay? So please be ready in a short moment. But the question I want to ask all 3 of you, because in your different ways you've actually made a really strong and similar point. So I mean, Jerzy, you going last about the emphasis on how long this has been going on, which really then, Jorge, you're talking about how people value their traditions. So, and the destruction of those traditions, you explained and outlined very, very clearly. So if this has been going on for so long and the destruction is so explicit and so against the wishes of ordinary people, how has this come to pass? How have we got to the point that you've all described? And Benzer, you often make a point in your report about the evasion of the elites about what they're doing, but to a certain extent it's been occurring before our very eyes for at least 15 years, probably more like 30, and arguably going back possibly even further. So if it is as you say, then how is it that it has got to this point? How has it been allowed to get to this point?
I try to respond. I think the situation is different than in every country. I think in the Western countries, in Spain, in France, in Luxembourg, Belgium, Germany, the situation is very, very hard to remove. I'm saying that, for example, in Spain, the traditions, the Holy Week is now, for the youth in Spain, is living with more enthusiastic than when I was 20 years old. Situation is changing. The question is, we have to seek the way of Orban. For example, we need to have a clear position to maintain the line, to maintain our more stronger position, and we have to help us because in other countries, maybe in Poland, in Hungary, the situation about the media, but in Spain, the 95% of the media are leftist media. Even these media that maybe you think they are right media. It's not true. It's not true. We don't have any option, political option. We have disappeared of the TV, the public TV, the private TV, and we need to work more than the enemy. But I think we have an option in the young people. I think in Spain, for example, or France, in other Western countries, there are 2 or 3 generations absolutely lost. Maybe my generation is lost. My generation is only thinking in money, only thinking in European funds, but the young people is thinking in other questions. Young people is concerned by the gender ideology, the gender policy, the abortion, and there are changes. And we have an option now. We have an option.
Thank you. Very interesting. Benza.
My explanation would be to say that it's a kind of metaphor. If you look in the mirror every day in the morning, you don't see any change. But if you look at your picture now and then in 10 years or 15 years, you can see some change. And somehow this is what happens in policy making as well, is that the step-by-step evasive policy making, you don't notice it each and every day, each and every week. But in terms of 5 or 10 years, you see the change. And that is what happened. I wrote a lot and I researched a lot the rule of law question. I remember that back in 2010, when first time the European Parliament, more especially the left wing of the European Parliament, not the EPP, not yet the EPP, came out with the idea of rule of law control over member states, everyone said, no, it's not possible. Then they repeated, they said, okay, but a bit, just a bit of control. It's not a serious control. They said in 2014, we will establish a rule of law framework. The Commission established this. The Council and the Council's legal service reacted. You can't do this because the treaties do not allow for a rule of law control over the member states for the European institutions. That was black and white, that was clear. And the Commission argued, no, it's not a rule of law control, it's just an internal procedure, 2014. And then, 10 years after, they say, you don't behave well, financial sanctions because of the rule of law. Because the taboos were broken step by step. And now, no one really kicks up a fuss when he or she reads in the news that there is a sanction over a member state, because it somehow becomes the normal way of the everyday life and the normal way of doing. And the younger generations, they only see this. They don't know what was in the past if they are not educated. And that's why we have to make sure they do not forget, and they are educated, and they know how they are coming from.
Okay, thank you very much. Jirja, and then we're going out to the audience. So if we can have the roving microphone ready, please.
There are at least 2 rules that may be invoked now. The first one is that every power corrupts. And the second, that every bureaucracy grows. And both rules are true if those power and bureaucracy are not counterbalanced by a system of checks and balances. And European Union was constructed in a way not to provide a proper system of checks and balances. Even European Parliament was not created in order to provide for democratic control and supervision of the EU bodies. It was created in order to provide European elites for the European Union. The elites who will treat European Union as their homeland, as their own field of interest. Of course, growing elites, growing with every election, growing with every year. So with time, we have experienced creation of a beneficiary system of a growing European Union, of more and more Europe, more and more centralized bodies, more and more power in hands of more and more representatives and more members of the bureaucracy. No revolution in the history of the world was successful without a new group of beneficiaries. This revolution follows the same steps. It creates group of new elites and new group of beneficiaries. Then, without checks and balances, this group growingly ask for more and more power in order to provide reason for their own existence.
Okay.
That's the mechanism that needs to be stopped. And the mechanism may only stop, maybe only stopped with the voice of the nations and with a democratic procedures inside of the nations, not inside of the whole EU.
Okay, great last point, the voice of the nations, and what happened there, what went wrong there. But you can come back to that. I'm going to take the audience now. Right, so we've got, please, the 6 microphones at the back, take the arm at the back. I can't see the person, but there's an arm there at the back. Thank you very much. Would you like to stand up? Because it'd be nice to see who you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Lily from The Guardian. I had a question for whichever panelist wants to take this. I was curious about how you see cooperation among far-right parties after the upcoming European Parliament election, how you see the two main groups perhaps shifting, where Fidesz might go. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Let's take some more questions, and then I'll bring the panel back in one go. So my colleague Richard here, please, and then I'll come over that side.
Yeah, my name is Richard Schenk from MCC Brussels, and I'm old enough to remember the good old days when the EU issued regulations on the curvature of bananas and cucumbers. Boy, if you only knew what was coming. And I'm less afraid of treaty changes, because treaty changes can be treated in a public debate or in institutions. But what especially Bence highlighted a lot, it was this slight change without any legitimacy coming from the treaties. And my impression is that the big problem is that the European Court of Justice is broken. If I go there as a member state, I cannot expect fair treatment. And this is not something a far-right conspiracy. The German Federal Constitutional Court began to revoke rulings by the European Court of Justice because it said this is a political decisions anymore. This cannot be justified anymore as a court of justice. So how can we establish a judicial system in Europe that protects the interests of member states?
Thanks ever so much. Take a couple more. There was a young man, I will come to you, but there's a young man there in the middle on that side. Yeah, please.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Stefan Hockey. I'm a researcher on Central and Eastern European affairs. Firstly, thank you all for your interventions. And my question is especially regarding what Mr. Buxadeh said about the fact that the original idea of Europe, of post-war European unity, having been founded on a explicitly Christian orientation. I mean, we all know that now blessed Robert Schuman was a daily churchgoer, and that they sought to put Christian ideals not only in European policies, but also in its symbolism. The flag is itself a Marian symbol. I would like to know, though, what was, in each of your opinions, what was the turning point in which the idea of Europe became decoupled, the idea of European unity became decoupled from the idea of European civilization? Because what it seems to me at the moment is that it has become much more a bureaucracy that is self-reproducing in a modernist logic, rather than something that claims the legacy of the 1,000 years of history, which you mentioned that Europe is based on. So what was the turning point for that? Thank you.
Thanks very much. If you could pass it behind you, there was a lady in a row behind you. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. My question is related to enlargement because today there's I'm sorry, I believe there's some problem, but
yeah.
I think everyone can hear me without the microphone as
Just
well.
keep speaking for the microphone for the recording, okay?
Okay,
Thanks.
I try to do that. So there's a momentum for enlargement right now in the EU, and I would like to hear your thoughts about the connection, or is there a connection at all between enlargement and the treaty revision claims, and do you think is it possible to implement an enlargement this big without some substantial changes in the decision making of the EU?
Great,
Thank
thanks
you.
very much. And pass it back forwards, please. That microphone, if you could pass it forwards again. There's a gentleman there. Yeah, and then I'll come back to you, the speakers, and then I'll come back out to the audience and get you all in. Yeah.
Of course, one only has to recollect the problems over Maastricht, the Danish referendum, the very small majority for the euro. In France, we went on to 2005 with a French and Dutch vote against the EU Constitutional Treaty, which was recreated as Lisbon. We know that the EU Treaty has in its DNA the primacy of European law, its judges, the central bank system, and all the rest of it. We look at the single market, which has laid waste to people's trades. It's laid waste to their wages. Any measures taken by a country to protect its own people is discriminatory and will be struck down by the ECJ, infringement by the Commission. It's all pretty grim. It's been grim for a long time. Why don't you just leave it? The country I know best, as we're supposed to say here in Brussels, we've left the EU. So why don't you stop moaning and organise yourselves and leave?
Okay, right. Now there's some really big questions on the table for you all. You won't be able to answer everything, so choose 2 or 3 that you're really keen to come back on, and I'm sure that will cover it across the piece. Right.
Yeah. But maybe
Yeah.
to this journalist of the Guardian, I think the far right is a not valid concept. It's a white concept. Conservative, identitarian, sovereignties, reformist, patriots. These are concepts with a real sense, a real content. And for this reason, the question is wrong, I think. But in any case, after the European elections, the question is how many MEPs are against the von der Leyen Commission? How many MEPs want to say no to this process? And I think we will be many. And all my colleagues in the European Parliament now, in the socialist delegation of Spain, that is in the government, and it is the worst government in Europe, the worst government in our history. They are absolutely afraid of the 9th of June. And this is the important. The fear is in the other side. And that is what we want. And the question about what is the moment when Europe changed, I don't know. What is the moment when the world changed? Was our society, our civilization decided not to be Christian? Maybe after the Second World War, maybe in the French Revolution, maybe about the European Commission, I think we know 2 big moments. The French Revolution in 1968 with the Vatican Concilium. It's one important moment, but the most important moment, I think, was the Treaty of Maastricht. The fall of the wall in Berlin, the defeat of the Soviet system provoked that the communist, the socialist, the ecologist, and those moments decided to be pro-European, and they invaded our institutions, and this is the moment. And for me, it's the big break or break in the history.
So given that, can you? I think perhaps you should answer, if you don't mind, the last question. Why not then leave?
What?
Did you not? You didn't hear that question. So the last question was why not leave? Why not leave?
Leave of the EU?
Yeah.
It's not in my agenda.
The question is why not? Why not?
I am a politician. You can speak with absolutely free. No? Absolutely free. No. It's not in the agenda.
Okay, all right. Thanks very much. Right, Jerzy.
Just getting back to the far-right parties, we are all aware that this is an easy stigmatization tool to call anybody a far-right party, especially in times when the true division falls on the sovereign political movements and the global management political movements. Those who serve sovereignty understood as control and power put on the national level, and those who serve global management, meaning sovereignty power being put on the international level or transnational level. We shouldn't use this kind of stigmatizing language. That's from my perspective, and especially that it does not pictures the political situation in a correct way. When it comes to enlargement and centralization, enlargement and changes of procedures, just read the 267 amendments, the resolution of the European Parliament. The only veto power that remains is the veto power against enlargement. And it is the true and honest position of the proponents of the reform. They do not really want enlargement of European Union to be on the political agenda. The only reason for reform is centralization. It is not about enlargement. And when did it change? To those Marian symbols, I will add the stained glass in the Strasbourg Cathedral, a gift of the community of Our Lady, stained glass of our picture of Our Lady to the Strasbourg Cathedral, and the organic cooperation that was in the beginning the form of cooperation, organic cooperation of nations in multiple fields of cooperation, one after another, taken by the founding fathers. It was the first approach, and then in 70s or 80s, we experienced the change from the bottom-up organic evolution of cooperation that was supported by Robert Schuman and others into a top-down design approach by the ideologues from Spinelli Group. That was probably the historical moment with the Single European Act when the change has happened.
Okay, thanks very much. Spencer.
So thank you very much. About the question of leaving the EU, is this a European position? Is this that European moral sense that in Brussels they suggest like we have to understand each other, we have to be inclusive, and now in a debate such as this, they say leave. I don't think this is a European position. And to add, I think we are fighting for the soul of Europe, for the spirit of Europe. So we have a lot of things to do in Europe. Regarding the question on the European Court of Justice, I see your point, and having my education in European law in Western universities, I know that this is a kind of taboo to criticize the European Court of Justice, but I never really understood why. Because the French law studies, legal studies, are about criticizing French courts' jurisprudence. So why not creating a school of which is critical of the jurisprudence of the European Court of Justice? I think that you have to be brave and you have to do it. The question on enlargement, I think that we can see in the paper which is prepared by the experts of the French and the German government, or mandated by these governments, that they link the two issues, and it is difficult to find out why. Maybe because they do not want enlargement and they wanted to put conditions which are unacceptable for the rest. This is one explanation. Or the other explanation is that if you look at what happened in the early 2000s, when the European Convention was going on, there were many arguments which argued that a treaty change was needed because of the enlargement of the EU, the upcoming enlargement in 2004 and 2006 towards Central and Eastern Europe. So this is a classical argument for me. And there is this question. Yes, I liked it. It gave impulses, the Fidesz far right, and so on and so on. I would say, come on, I don't think that we are far right here. And if far right is what we say, nice people, then the opponents are on the very far left, that they are already on the moon or I don't know where. So really, we can use these expressions, but I think that there is a meaningful debate here, meaningful ideas, and we should treat each other with this respect. We treat the Guardian with respect, so the Guardian can also treat us with respect, and we can be in a nice and beautiful Europe.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so there's lots of people who want to speak and people who've been very patient. I am going to take, because you're at the back and because he's my boss, I'm going to take Frank Furedi and then I'm going to come down to the front.
Right, so I think Lily raises a very important question, it's a difficult question, which is how can what she calls far right, which obviously is a stigma, but basically conservative, patriotic parties, how can they work together? Because the experience is, to be honest, is that the right in Europe is as divided as the left is. And there's a very powerful sectarian impulse within all the political movements within Europe. And that's the truth. I mean, I've been here a year, and I noticed that everybody is gossiping against everybody else. There is no real sense of comradeship in the way that I understand it. And that's a challenge to us. It's particularly a challenge because patriotic parties tend to be nationally based. They have a national culture within which they work. They haven't got the experience of that kind of intellectual interaction and network building, which is particularly strong amongst the old left, not the new left, but the old left, the old school left, where they used to sort of take each other a little bit more seriously. So we have got to learn to do two things. The first thing we need to do is to develop our intellectual resources from all the different countries so that we're able to join together and develop a sustainable and plausible counter-narrative to the one that prevails. It's not good enough just simply to say they're wrong and we're right. Our job is, as Jorge said, we lost generations of young people. We're not going to win them back unless we're plausible and clear and coherent. So that's the first job. And that's something that can bind us together because all of us, from whatever country we come from, have got an equal interest to develop the theoretical, intellectual ideals that really make sense in the 21st century. The second thing we need to do, I think that's really quite important, is to begin to sort of work out a political framework that is relevant for every single nation, that doesn't intrude upon what the Spanish want or the Poles want or Hungarians want, but really raises the old values of Europe in a kind of plausible 21st century kind of a way, where that really is a system of ideas that everybody can buy into, regardless of their own national or regional preferences. I think that's really quite important. On the far right issue, I call myself far right when I play football. In fact, that is my favorite position. Growing up as a child, I always moved to the right as much as possible. And the guys in the center knew what I wanted. But politically, I think we should understand that we live in a world where everybody calls each other political labels that they don't really identify with. So people call populists people who are anti-elitist, but most people that are called populists do not identify. They don't see themselves as populists. They see themselves as Italian patriots or as Spanish patriots. They don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm a populist. But some newspapers decide that's what they are. People I know who are called far right don't wake up in the morning, brush their teeth, and they say, oh my God, I'm really far right. But that is really what happens in the kind of world we live in. And I think we got to rise above that. So if the other side does that, we got to learn not to play the same kind of game. I think we need to be much more civilized in our political discourse, give the benefit of a doubt to our opponents, and try to get involved into a world where arguments and debates, a genuine culture of debate between all the political sides is taken seriously. And I think that's what MCC Brussels tried to do. And I welcome, I would love to have somebody from The Guardian come on the platform, even you, Lily, and we can have a nice conversation about the future of Europe. And I think you would benefit, and I would benefit, from some kind of engagement like that.
Okay, thanks very much. Right, if we could come down the front, there's 3 people here who've been, and now a 4th, been very patient. So we'll start with this gentleman here.
Yes, my name is András László. I was born in Budapest and I traveled Europe and the world. The title of this conference was the United States of Europe. United States, we didn't talk about the elephant in the room, about Trump guy, who mentioned to Putin, if the member states of Europe doesn't pay 2%, invade them. So how is your opinion about Trump and the United States?
Thank you very much. If you could pass it to the gentleman next to you, and then we'll go back to the lady behind.
My name is Paweł Halinski. I don't really have a question, but it's a proposition, not only for Mr. Jerzy Kwaśniewski, but for all of us, our families and our friends who are conservative. Not the Sundays, but the Sunday 21st of April at 2 p.m. there will be a March for Life here in Brussels. I think it will be a very good opportunity to say not only the Eurocrats, but to the world that even in Brussels there are still people who are pro-life, who are against abortion and against euthanasia. So I hope you will also comment on me.
Okay, thanks very much. And pass it, please, behind you to the lady there.
Hello, my name is Nina Wolf. I'm American and I'm a European national. I'm a German national. I'm an independent researcher. I would like to pick a needle out of your haystack, and I have a lot less experience than anybody in this room probably. But I'm hearing a lot about Christian and religion and the basis of Europe. And although I respect all of you, and I thank you for coming, Europe is not just made up of Christians. I, as a Jew, want to live in a Europe that is open to all of this. And I also think that we're all here today, and it's a luxury. And what is that luxury? That luxury is that we are able, as human beings, as Frank said, to come together and discuss something. And why is that? Because the European Union was built out of the European coal and steel, out of the ashes of World War II. And this isn't really a question, it's just a slight reminder. And I think it deserves something, a little bit of, respect is the wrong word, but thought. Thank you so much, though.
Okay, thank you very much. And points are very, very welcome as much as questions. However, we are going to come to a close soon. So I got John Woober at the front here. Anybody else want to speak? Put your hand up now. And then we've got Werner Patzout and Thomas Fazzi. Okay.
John Woober, Flemish Club, Arts, Science, Industry. My question is the following. because we are doing this now for 5 years, and I'm very happy that the MCC takes the lead here and brings the people together, and Frank is always combining the people, inviting the people. However, I never see that when we are getting the centrum right people together by the elections, the parliament is not going to have any say because that's not in the EU regulation. So the European Council will actually decide who's the commission, and only at the end they are allowed to say, yes, we are going to do it, and hopefully we will have enough members of parliament who are going to say no. However, when we want to change a united Europe in the way we want it, we have to have a new elite, because you need an elite to bring forward your country. You have to have educated people. So like an innovation matrix, you need the politicians, you need the scientists, you need the industry, you need all of them. So not everything of Europe is wrong, but how are we going to bring the new, good people together to go forward? And no, we don't want to go out of Europe. We have seen how that works. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. If we could go then back to Werner Patzout and then to Thomas Fazi, and then we'll have your last, so answer questions and final points at the end. Yeah.
I certainly share much of the criticism against a European superstate, and I really dislike the vision of United States of Europe. But is it really necessary to claim that instead of criticizing the EU, we should better leave it? Is the EU really such a monstrosity that we simply cannot stand living in this political community? We never should forget what our colleague has mentioned just before, the achievements. We can travel freely. We can live everywhere in Europe. We have all the possibilities after those atrocities of nationalism, and this we never should forget. The European Union is something like an experiment. Never in history has been built up a new superstructure above well and nicely working nation states. And how to combine nation-state democracy with effective and legitimate steering structures on the European, on a supranational level, this is something humankind has not learned so far. We are in the midst of an experiment, which we have to observe with goodwill, good intention, and look at what can be improved. It will seem to me that many of our problems with the European Union and the source of much of criticism raised against it comes from the fact that the development of the European institutional system has come in a section of, as economists would say, diminishing marginal utility. Ever more, Europe will not give better problem solutions than having the same state of European integration. And to end, the bad story starts with good intentions. When the still nameless assembly of the European coal and steel community came together, this nameless assembly decided to behave like a real parliament. It was a German president of the assembly, by the way, who steered the whole enterprise in this way. And this is how many European institutions have behaved. They started to behave as if they were more than they have been, and they were hoping that in the course of time, their visions, their ideals, however you want to call it, that in the course of time their visions would become true. And because there is no master plan and only experimentation in an absolutely new field of political, so to speak, engineering, we need to be careful not to exaggerate, neither in defining ideals for Europe, nor in saying, well, everything which is done now is somehow wrong. Something is wrong, and we should improve it.
Thank you very much. And then finally, Thomas Fazi, one of our authors, and then each of you will get to speak in reverse order. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be a bit of a party pooper, but I have to disagree with a lot of my friends and colleagues here. I mean, I think that if we're talking about democracy and national sovereignty, I don't think the issue of Euro exit or leaving the EU can completely be brushed aside just like that. I think it is a serious issue that has to be taken into consideration, because the solution that seems to be proposed here is that of reforming the EU from within. But I think we all agree that that is a very, very hard thing to do. I mean, when it comes to the treaties, that essentially requires unanimity. So what we're talking about for serious structural reform is a virtual majority of governments in Europe that have almost a virtual unanimous agreement on what to do. And that seems like almost a virtual impossibility for me. So I don't think the question of Euro exit can be completely brushed aside, because otherwise what we're saying is that we're okay with democracy being put aside for as long as it takes to reform Europe, even if that takes years or decades. And I don't think that's entirely compatible with a sovereignist position. And then I think there's an issue that hasn't really been touched upon yet, and it's that of the euro, the single currency. So of course Hungary and Poland were smart enough not to join the euro, and I think, of course, on top of having an intelligent leadership, that's also one of the reasons why those countries have been able to have some autonomy in terms of their policy making. But when it comes to countries in the euro, we have to acknowledge that the autonomy, the policy autonomy of countries, is virtually close to zero, because all the major economic decisions are taken in Brussels and Frankfurt. And so if Vox were to come to power in Spain, we all know that all the tools that the EU has at its disposal to disempower critical governments. We've seen that at play in Greece. We've seen it at play in Italy, my country, in 2018, when we elected a populist government that was easily disempowered by the European Union. And so I think we have to keep an open mind about all options. I mean, one can disagree with the idea of a unilateral exit, but I think as a plan B, we have to keep it as a potential option, I think.
Okay, thanks ever so much. Right, okay, so for your final words, please, in the reverse order in which you spoke. So I'm going to start with you, Jerzy, if you could go first.
Starting with some answers and replies. Thank you very much for the intervention on the on our discussion. And as I remember, we mentioned twice Christian identity of Europe in Jorge's and my interventions. But of course, what we do is that we just admit the facts and the history that Europe is built upon Greek philosophy, Roman law, and Judeo-Christian ethics. And that's just admitting the facts. And it is also something that we should admit, that the founding fathers were deeply rooted in their Christian heritage. And they draw from this Christian heritage while building up this new community above all the hostilities and atrocities of the war. But absolutely it is not about the contemporary domination or even a violence, ideological violence of any group against any other group. Answering the question on Donald Trump, maybe it's not so popular to say that in Brussels, but I'm a Trump guy. And I strongly believe that it is Donald Trump who may bring peace to Europe and who may bring a stable cooperation on transatlantic level between European Union and United States. And of course, we know his language. It should not be understood directly and straightforward. The other things may be said about Joe Biden, whose peaceful language stands for warmongering intentions. Thank you very much for the pro-life information as well. And my final intervention would be about leaving Europe, because this question was asked, and it is very important for us to consider what will be the final result of a centralization of Europe. The final results of an attempt to build up a federal structure, not even a federal but centralized structure, will be a failure of European project. Without single nation, there may not be a single state. And there is not a single nation, there are multiple nations, multiple identities, multiple traditions inside of Europe and this community. So we should not leave Europe, but Europe will fail as a single state project, and then we will have to think about alternative project, alternative political attempts to recreate what is possible. For now, what is possible is to influence European Union as it is.
Okay, thanks ever so much, Urja. Jorge, your
Yeah.
final thoughts, please.
It's the same about Christianity. Christianity, for me, is a very large concept. Christianity includes this Judeo-Christian tradition, and when I was referred about Christian, is in the birth of our nation. In the Hungarian constitution, it talks about the King Stephen, no, for example. No? We have San Isidoro del Sevilla in 450, no? And this is the idea, but it's not a question about the confession. The concrete confession is excluding other confession. It's clear our position. I don't know if I am a Trump gay, but it's clearly I not a Biden gay. Biden is an enemy of our convictions, our ideologies, our position international. No? It's clear. Any one of us has said everything in Europe is wrong. I think there are questions that we can improve, we can reform. I am European. I am citizen of Spain. Spain is Europe. Why should I leave the European Union? They can leave. They can leave. They can leave Europe. They can go to other countries. And it is possible. For example, in Spain, we have derogated 3 socialist laws about the democratic memory that forbid to speak about our history. They say they are a real history, official history. We have arrived to the regional government, and in 6 months we have derogated 3 laws approved or passed by the socialist government with a coalition with the PP. It's difficult, it's hard. When we arrived here 5 years ago, we only have had 2 references, Poland and Hungary. And you know, you have many opinions for the governments, of the governments in Europe, but we now have Hungary, Italy, Sweden, Czech Republic, Finland. We can win. We are going to win if we maintain the position. And for this journalist of The Guardian, I would like to give you a headline as a candidate of new European elections of Vox, because I am the rapporteur of Eurodac. I am receiving all the attacks of the NGOs this week, and we are very close to Fidesz, but we would like to be closer to Fidesz in the next term. It's a good headline for you. Thank you.
I think it's been duly noted.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jorge. Right, Benza, please.
So, thank you very much. The first question on Donald Trump. So I don't know whether Mr. Trump will win the elections in the United States of America or not, or will he become president again or not. But I'm sure that he will not become president of the United States of Europe. And this is a fact, because he is an American guy and he doesn't want to govern the European Union. And this is halfly a joke, because I think that in general the European Union should define its own interest independently from who is leading the United States of America. It can be Trump, the Democrats, the Republicans. Europe must define its own interest and not only follow the United States of Europe, cooperate like a closer ally, of course, but first of all, define its own interest. So it's an important question. Thank you very much for the information on the March of Life as well. Very important topic. you also raised this question of it is thanks to the EU that we are here today and we can discuss freely. I truly believe in this idea, but I'm not sure. I'm sure that at the beginning, the fact that the EU was established helped people to get together and have an international conversation among European people, and it's very important. And this is also my experience. Like when I was foreign student in France, I really enjoyed this experience. But I'm not 100% sure that we are here now and today thanks to the EU. We are here because we are part of the EU, but we are here because MCC Brussels is creating a forum for discussions on topics which are not discussed that much elsewhere. And here we give voice to people who doesn't receive opportunities that much elsewhere in the Brussels bubble. So I think that we are here, yes, because of the European Union, but also because of the work of MCC Brussels as well, which is important. This is a respectful debate. I'm also very happy to have the Guardian journalist Lily Bayer here. I think it's a good start for discussion. We remain open. And I personally remain open to any and every feedbacks on my report if you take the time to read it. Thank you very much.
Okay, now thank you. But before we thank our speakers, which we will do, and then we'll get a drink and carry on the conversation, I just want to finish with one important announcement. So I think there was one aspect of Werner, my colleague's comments that I really agreed with. A lot of the conversation tonight, which has been very good, very respectful, very interesting, very important, has focused on one aspect of what's gone wrong or where we are at, if you like, with this experiment. And it's focused on the European Union, not on the issue of politics within nation states themselves. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware, but next week is a very, very important event because there is a conference called NatCon for short, or National Conservative, the National Conservative Conference in Brussels on the 16th and 17th of April. Now, that conference is an opportunity. There's some really fantastic speakers, but there's an enormous number of people who have signed up for that conference and want to be there because they want to discuss and debate the future of politics and the future of national conservatism within their own countries. A phenomenally brilliant opportunity and important event. There are many people in Brussels who don't want that event to happen. They're actually really rather angry that it is and really going to kick up, like Juncker would say, they're going to kick up a fuss. They're going to kick up a big fuss about that event happening. And so the fact that that's happening is a brilliant opportunity. Tickets are in really high demand, but if we're supporting the conference, we're one of the partners. So if you haven't signed up yet and you want to get a bit of an in, then come and talk to me. Give me a business card or give me your contact details or talk to my colleague Jacob Reynolds at the end. But I'm just telling you, it's a big opportunity and it's worth taking. Okay, now is the time to please thank our panel. And enjoy some wine and more conversation. Thank you very much for coming. Yeah, we have to do a family photo.